Welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm Shireen Oberg, and I'm a yoga teacher and author devoted to the path of healing and heart-based living. And I want to help you to step into what you truly are and to your highest potential. On this podcast, I share with you tools and insights to help you move ever forward on your spiritual and healing path. With guests from all over the world, from different wisdom traditions, I wish to create a web of loving energy that permeates the whole world to create more love and peace. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more guidance and love. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I hope you are having a beautiful week and that you have integrated the beautiful and transformational energy of the equinox and last week's full moon. And this week is all about something that I really love, and it's traditional Chinese medicine. I am myself a licensed and certified traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and acupuncturist, and I have today Rachel Appel, a Colorado licensed acupuncturist and clinical Chinese herbalist. And she's been on the podcast before, and we've been talking about the shifts in seasons and elements for spring and summer. And now we're talking about the fall, autumn, which is connected with the metal element and the lungs in Chinese medicine. And we talk about everything that you can think about at this time to help your body to stay balanced in this shifting season. Of course, if you're on the southern hemisphere, it's going to be the opposite. There is an episode about how to prepare and to be in the spring season and the wood element, so you can check that out with me and Rachel. If you are in the northern hemisphere and you're feeling a little bit of the fall coming back now, and after this fall equinox, I feel like we've been having a big shift here in the Nordics with the weather. So today we will talk about the 5 elements, and as well as the lungs, which is connected to this season, and the lungs are connected also to the emotion of grief. So we can think about that if we start experiencing any type of feelings of grief or sadness at this time. It's normal, and we can support it with our diets and lifestyle. And Rachel again shares a beautiful breathing exercise for the lungs and the metal element. So it's really beautiful. She's also a licensed yoga instructor and is working towards becoming a teacher of Vedic meditation. She received her Master of Acupuncture and Master of Chinese Herbal Medicine from Southwest Acupuncture College in Boulder, Colorado, where she works. And she has a passion for holistic healing and traditional Chinese medicine due to her own health issues of chronic fatigue syndrome and hormone imbalances in her life. So this is how she got into this healing modality. And yeah, I'm really excited to share this with you. I also want to share that between October 4th and 8th, Hay House will be having a Change Your Life with Affirmations challenge, which I will be a part of as well one of those days. And it's about working with your thoughts and how you speak to really work with these affirmations that change your whole vibration. These beautiful affirmations was how I started my healing journey, especially with Louise Hay's beautiful affirmations. And you can improve many areas of your life, from your health, your vitality, your self-esteem. It's just so heart-opening. And you also learn how to plant seeds for your future, what you want to create, and how you are in the world and how you feel in the world. And you will get live webinars, audio lessons, guided affirmations, and also 101 best Louise Hay affirmations of all time. So if you want to join this, it's all free. It's a 5-day affirmation challenge. You can click the link in the show notes or connect with me if you have any questions. I would love to see how this challenge can help you, because for me, it was one of the first things I started with besides meditation was affirmations daily. And it really shifted how I was feeling, thinking, and approaching life. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and have a beautiful day and evening. Hi, Rachel. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have you here today. And we have talked before on the podcast. We connected for the first time when we talked about the wood element and how to prepare for that, and the spring season. And we talked about the fire element. And today we're going to talk about the lungs and metal element. It's going to be so much fun. So welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be back with you.
Yay. And I want to ask, actually, because you've shared some mindfulness practices before, but maybe if you want to share something, if you have a specific type of ritual or routine that you do, maybe around Chinese medicine, and if you do it on a daily basis or if you do it on a weekly basis, anything that you can share from your Chinese medicine background.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is receiving acupuncture myself. That's something I've been doing on and off for the last 4 to 5 years. And it's helped me so much just to stay balanced and to manage my stress. And I go to see one of my teachers from my school who is also my mentor. And it's just been such a powerful healing modality for me. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the other thing is just some of the breathing exercise I've shared in the past few podcasts, as well as one that I'll share today. Those Qigong breathing exercises where you inhale the color associated with a certain organ. Today we'll be focusing on the color white for the lungs, and imagining that light being very healing. And then on the exhale, you make a sound that's associated with that organ. So for example, today's sound is kind of like a hiss, and that's really, really strengthening for the lungs. So I enjoy practicing those breathing exercises as well.
Yes, they've been beautiful, and we're going to do it today. And maybe just shortly, for those that haven't listened to any of our talks before, maybe you want to introduce yourself before we go into this season and the element of this season.
Sure thing. So my name is Rachel Appel, and I'm an acupuncturist and herbalist in Boulder, Colorado. I have been practicing for a few years now, and I actually got into this type of medicine because I, kind of didn't feel so well a few years back and had some imbalances I was dealing with. And acupuncture was kind of the only thing that helped me get back on my feet. And I also felt very seen and heard by my acupuncturist. I hadn't really experienced that before with Western medicine or other Eastern practices. And it just felt so nourishing. And I wanted to be able to offer that to my friends and family and, strangers and patients. And so I went back to school and studied for 4 years. And now I have my own practice in Boulder, Colorado.
Thank you for sharing that again here. And so we're coming up. We had this fire season. It's very young and hot and connected with the heart, as we said when we recorded the last time. So it's a definite shift I feel the shift just moving into Virgo season, like moving away from the Leo season into Virgo, and and then into Libra, it's a lot of shifts and changes in the weather and within ourselves and our consciousness. So now we're moving into, or have moved into, the element of metal in Chinese medicine. Maybe shortly you can explain about the 5 elements, just for the listeners to have an overview, and then what the metal element is.
So each season is associated with a different element, and there's 5 elements, as you mentioned. Each element also has many different associations, colors, emotions, foods, weather, qualities of voice, all these different intricacies. And so today we're focusing on the metal element, as you mentioned, which is paired with fall. And the organs associated with this element are the lungs and the large intestine. The way I like to remember that fall is associated with metal is because fall is all about letting go and shedding what we no longer need, kind of like how the leaves are shedding from the trees. And so, metals are these precious things that come from the earth. And so this time of year is all about letting go of what we don't need and focusing on the precious things, the metals that are precious. So that's kind of the way that I remember it in my head. Yeah.
And when it comes to the emotion, I think many of us can relate to also the emotion connected to this season, because it is a release, and nature starts to like slowly release and die, and maybe we can talk about that part as well.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, this time of year, it really is about letting go and embracing change, letting go with ease, not feeling that attachment and like you're holding on to things. And so with that letting go, as you mentioned, the emotion, there's an emotion associated with each element, and this emotion is grief and sadness. That's what we're kind of feeling more this time of year. And it makes sense, right? Because when we let go of things, there can be this grief and sadness that comes up. Leaning into change sometimes can be scary, and there can be some fear around it and sadness of not knowing what's to come. But I think a lot of the times we associate grief and sadness with this negative connotation, but it's actually a beautiful thing, and it's a part of life. And we're meant to feel the feels and feel these things coming up. And I hear a lot that people have grief over summer ending as well. So I think that's another reason why grief and sadness can be tied to this time of year. Summer is such a joyful and happy and abundant season. And sometimes when we lean into fall, we know what's coming. We know fall and winter are coming, kind of these more introverted and colder and darker months. But as I mentioned, there's a purpose for that. And it's healthy for us to kind of go through these 4 seasons and the different cycles of nature and life.
Yes, all of the emotions are equally important, and we tend to value some of them more because it's associated with this extrovert energy and always being light and always being happy, and that's not how life or nature is, or the universe. It's a mix of both, and we have to have that balance. So what happens, because I'm thinking about what we can see in like clinical practice, is first of all, what happens when we are suppressing grief, and what happens if we are almost stuck in grief? How would you explain it in Chinese medicine? Like, first of all, suppressing it, but also what if we get stuck in it and we can't get out of it?
Yeah, I think, when we suppress any emotion, it can come up in different ways. With grief or sadness specifically, since it's tied to the lung and the large intestine, we would probably see imbalances in those organs. So, maybe tightness in the chest, or crying more, or constipation or loose stools with the digestion in the large intestine. So when some of these symptoms come up, especially a handful of them associated with one of those two organs, then I would definitely be thinking about grief and sadness and asking the patient kind of what they've been dealing with in that realm.
Thank you. And do you think also, is it connected, how is it connected to trauma? And how would you work with helping your patients with these type of issues?
I think so many of us have trauma that we don't realize. I mean, trauma, it seems like such a big word, but we have all these micro traumas that arise every day. I mean, just what we've gone through in the last year and a half is very traumatic. And it's interesting that with COVID, everything's tied to the lungs, and there's so much grief around everything that's happening. Also with the wildfires that are happening, that's also, there's grief of losing our homes and the smoke affecting our lungs. And so those are just two examples of trauma that have been affecting a lot of people currently. And so I've been working with that in patients and just making sure we're talking things out, and I'm encouraging them to express themselves and not hold those emotions in, and kind of normalize and name what we're all experiencing and how this trauma may affect us in the long term. How are you seeing it manifest in your practice and in your daily life?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's a emotion that like you said, it's somehow the sadness and sometimes fear can also be connected with it. So it's like this very watery metal, like this more heavy and dense feelings are manifested. And what I definitely, because it is connected with the lungs, I'm thinking that let's say if you are stuck in that emotion, like basically it affects your whole immune system. You're like breaking down your immune system if you are in that state. And you know how most people feel, like when you feel grief, you feel it in your chest. So it's a mix of your heart, of course, and your lungs. And for example, in yoga, if we see that in pranayama, in breath work, it can be really hard for people to take deep inhalations and long exhalations, and it feels stuck, like something is stuck there. So I feel like breath work is so important for the lungs and the element, and to balance and move around that emotion and not feeling like you have to carry that. But of course, like, sometimes I feel like like grief, it has to be healed in so many ways. So like embodied and physical work with it, like in the body, is so important. So even if you have issues with opening up your chest and doing those type of stretches in yoga, for example, it feels like it really tightens everything up, and also in the back. And I'm thinking about, so if one has a lot of cravings for spicy, that's connected to the metal element. And maybe that can be a sign of deficiency. What do you think?
I think that can definitely be the case. The flavor associated with this season is pungent, or also known as spicy. And that flavor can be found in things like peppers, mustard, other spices like that. And the flavor can really open up the senses and clear the sinuses and stimulate the lungs. So it would make sense if someone was a bit deficient that they would be craving more of that. But we don't want to have too much of this flavor. Too much can be a bit harmful and could even injure the lungs. So small amounts in your meals throughout the season is really strengthening for the lungs, and can, open those sinuses and stimulate both the lungs and large intestine.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about So definitely it's scientifically proven that those that are suffering from asthma can be more likely to experience depression. So that's like from a Western perspective. So it makes total sense, right? And it's also like if you have weak lungs physically and you don't feel like you're breathing in, you lose also this ability to take in new chi or prana, or like this energy that you need into your system, because it's not only eating and drinking, it's also the air we breathe. So I'm thinking that also the environment can really affect you, because if you are in a city where you're also breathing not so much clean air, if you compare it to being in nature and around trees and all of this, that affects, it's like external pathogens then that are affecting, and then maybe we might be feeling depressed. Or I feel like a lot of people that are living in big cities do feel that, and especially maybe around this season, that the energy and the mood goes down. But maybe we just need to be connect back to nature, to breathe with nature, and to receive that vitality, to strengthen and to not fall down again, like each cycle that this comes back.
Yeah, I think it's so important to always connect with nature. I know personally when I go out and have a big hike or walk, I feel like I can take a deeper breath. It's almost like being around the trees give me permission to breathe deeper. So I think if someone has a lung deficiency or asthma, seasonal allergies, something like that, it is important to make sure you're getting lots of time in nature, around trees, in clean air. You might want to consider living in a place that has cleaner air quality and less likely to have, high smoke content, kind of like how the Western states are experiencing right now in the United States. But I think just having that awareness, if you are someone that is more sensitive and has a bit more of a lung deficiency.
Yeah, definitely. And also I'm thinking about the correlation between being fearful and anxious, which we've also seen. Like, it's like when you start having grief or feeling like down or not connected with your lungs and breath and not being vitalized, it can also move into, because it doesn't nourish anymore, the water element, the kidneys, which is connected to emotions of fear and some type of like anxiety. I don't know if it's kidneys or worrying is the spleen, but I'm thinking that it might affect that. So I'm just thinking about the state we can all go into if we feel like that. We can always connect with the breath and really do breath work to also release. I feel like breath work is both energizing, soothing, but also very releasing if we need to release something from our system.